Hey everybody, welcome back to James Draws Everything, continuing of course with drawing every country in the world's flag. And today we're finishing up the Balkans, right? We're doing our last Balkan country. We're going to be doing Croatia. And if you're like me, and sometimes you struggle to remember which country is which in the former Yugoslavia, Croatia is shaped like a C, right? C, Croatia. That's how I remembered anyways. And so last final Balkan episode, final headache, because these Balkan countries always have crazy complicated histories, so that's the last of that. But I do like this country, and I think the flag is pretty cool too, so we'll get to all that here. So I do have to say I like Croatia, but again, I won't miss having to do the history lessons for these places. Okay, so let's just figure out some stuff here real quick. Croatia does have a slightly longer flag, inspired by the Russian flag, right? The Pan-Slavic colors, which we'll get to here. So early Slavic migrations into Croatia that happens around like the late 6th century. So it was part of the Roman Empire at that point. By the 7th century, they organized this territory into two duchies. And early on, a lot of these Slavic peoples kind of developed their own identities. Just as kind of a general rule of thumb, Serbia and Croatia kind of tend to be the bigger sort of power players in like the former Yugoslavia countries. Serbia tends to be Orthodox. Croatia tends to be Roman Catholic. All right, so some early division there when the Croats they lean a little bit more towards the Roman Catholic version of Christianity. So there's an early king, Branimir, in 879. And then in 925, Croatia is elevated to a kingdom from a duchy. And there's a secession crisis after that dynasty ends. And they enter a union with Hungary in the 12th century. All right, and that's going to be very important kind of later on. Because not really shortly after, but around like the 16th century, this is where you see some encroachment by like the Ottoman Empire into the Balkans. And this is one of the few things that does unify the Balkan states. They all kind of have an out for the Ottomans, right? So they all thought of the Ottomans, as like their oppressors. And other than that, though, there's a lot of differences there, a lot of religious differences. They're all Slavic people, but there's language differences as well, because the Croatians are, again, they're Roman Catholic. They keep the Latin alphabet, while the Orthodox Slavs, mainly like the Serbs, they go with the Cyrillic alphabet, right? So same language, but using a different way to communicate it, right? So can't really have that and be unified, right? It's like it's kind of like if you can't agree on which side of the road to drive on, right? There's going to be accidents, there's going to be troubles, there's going to be issues, and that kind of simmers for a very long time in this part of the world. Okay, give me 1 second here. Yes, one of the reasons why I like this flag. It's just got a really cool little like checkerboard pattern in it, kind of unlike any other one. All right, so the Ottomans basically, pretty much take over this region, the future Yugoslavia, and then that kind of puts them at odds with the rising Habsburg Empire, right? So the Croats, they kind of make a play here for a union, right, with one of the Habsburg kings, and that union kind of eventually pays off. There's a series of wars with the Ottomans, which kind of leads to them, sort of breaking away from their power structure. But there's a little bit of a trade-off there, because they're basically like giving up one empire for another, right? So when the Ottomans are sort of driven out here through a combination of factors, right? There's a series of wars. It's not really just one. And it's also kind of just coming at the same time that there's just a sort of a general decline in their empire. The Slavic people here, again, they basically just trade the Ottomans for the Habsburgs, right? And then there's also a union with Austria and Hungary, right? So they're kind of consolidating their power base at the time, and it just sort of results in a lot of unhappy people here, because this is also a time where there's a lot of rising sort of nationalist movements, right? So I did mention before how you have Croats as like, the Roman Catholics, and then Serbia as, the Orthodox half. So those are the, again, kind of the big players there. And then there's also, Montenegro, which is, unified with Serbia at that point in time. You have Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is sort of caught in the middle, right, of them, and it's also much more Muslim than the other countries there. There's also Slovenia, right? So, yeah, there's a lot of nationalist movements, and during World War I, the Ottoman Empire, that's basically when they bite the dust. But then also the Habsburg Empire is pretty much done at that point as well, because they're on the losing side of the war. So they give up their empire, and that leaves these Slavic states here kind of on their own, and that's when they sort of unify as like a pan-Slavic state, right? So this is like the beginnings of Yugoslavia, right? Because basically, ethnically they're kind of like the same people, but there's all those differences that are going to cause quite a few issues throughout the 20th century. So Yugoslavia, in the interwar period, right, between World War I and World War II, maybe it looked good on paper, maybe it didn't, either way, it wasn't really working out, right? So there's a lot of conflict there. And during World War II, you also have to take into consideration that communism is rising in Europe at this point in time, and that is a big factor in kind of starting World War II, because these countries saw what happened to the big Slavic power, right, Mother Russia, and they didn't want that happening there. So some of the hyper nationalist movements, they really fight against that. This actually leads to Croatia almost becoming like a puppet state of Nazi Germany during World War II. The Ustashi, right? They're like a pro-fascist organization. And then you have the partisans. And the partisans are communists, communist adjacent. Well, they're basically communists. And they're led by a guy, Josip Broz Tito. All right, so we talked about Tito quite a few times. I think in every one of these former Yugoslavia state episodes, we have to talk about Tito, right? So, oversimplifying things here, but a lot happens where maybe the anti-communist factions here kind of get a raw deal from like the British, and sort of drives them into Nazi hands. And then also, they lose out on that war because Stalin was in it to win it, and the partisans were generously backed, right, to help spread good old communism into Europe. So you can say what you want about that, right? There's all sorts of opinions about the outcome of that particular war, but yeah, the Croats, maybe they thought they had a raw deal, and either way, they do get absorbed back into a unified Yugoslavia under Tito. And Tito, very unique because he has a break with Stalin, right? And this really kind of changes Stalin's position on a lot of his foreign influence, who his allies really were. And remember, communism was supposed to be one united proletariat against the like those evil capitalist pigs. And Tito, he broke with Stalin, so that was a big no-no. And Stalin, resented Yugoslavia for that. So Yugoslavia becomes a very unique place in the Cold War, just because they're basically behind the curtain pretty much, but they are not aligned with the Soviet Union. They're like pretty much like the only communist power that's allowed to make its own calls, right? So mostly left alone during the Cold War, which again, this give it to Tito, I guess. And we're definitely not communist sympathizers here at James Draws Everything, but Tito was a little bit different, and I don't remember which episode I've said this on, because we got quite a few former Yugoslavia countries, but yeah, he's even today, after the fall of communism and the kind of the horrors of the 1990s, which we'll get into, Tito still kind of has a favorable opinion in some of these countries, right? Because again, tons and tons of religious and political strife and differences in Yugoslavia, right? I may have said that Yugoslavia may have made sense on paper. To me, it didn't, because again, you have way too many differences here that go back hundreds of years, right? You can go back to the split between the Catholic and the Orthodox churches, right? The Byzantines and then Rome. So yeah, it was always one of those places, just kind of a tinderbox, sort of just held together with duct tape, just waiting for that spark to go off. And then that spark kind of does go off in 1980, right? So, sometimes you do have, like, the man of history, who is more important than, possibly, he's the right man for the time, more important than the events that surround him and stuff. It could only be that guy, and maybe that's true for Tito, right? Because Tito dies in 1980, and then 1982, like T-O-O, not 1982 the year. 1980 also, communism is pretty much dying by this point, right? Like, all of, the funds that were being funneled into the Soviet Union have basically dried up, right? The Soviet Union's losing a lot of hold over, its satellite states there, and communism's falling apart. By the end of the decade, it's pretty much over. So that was going to happen anyway. Tito dying just kind of helps sort of hasten that process. And then that kicks off the Balkan Wars of the 1990s. So the largest European conflict since World War II, right? A lot of deaths during that war. But it does result in, all of these states, kind of gradually over time becoming independent, right? So Croatia does become independent in the 1990s. The conflicts there are kind of more between Bosnia-Herzegovina and Serbia. Then, of course, Serbia kind of gets in trouble again in the late 90s with Kosovo and all of that. But Croatia, for the most part, has rebounded quite well, since those times, since they gained independence. Very prosperous country, pretty peaceful for the most part. And yeah, so it's definitely a cool place, I think. And it does have a cool flag. Again, I like the that little checker pattern there. Let's just write that in there, Croatia. So, what does that flag mean? Again, it's the Pan-Slavic colors, and then it's imposed on the Croatian coat of arms. So it's got the main shields, checkerboard, 13 red and 12 white fields, surmounted by 5 smaller shields. Oh, I thought those were game pieces. All right, so those are shields. They form a crown over the main shield, and the 5 small shields represent 5 historic regions. So Croatia, Dubrovnik, Dalmatia, Istria, and Slavonia. And Dalmatia, yes, that is where they get Dalmatians from. So that's where that word comes from. And that is the flag of Croatia. So everything else, guys, pretty much is heavy hitters. I left a lot of the big ones for the end. So yeah, everything else on this page, we got 2 of the biggest, the highest population countries in the world, and some countries with some very, very long and rich histories. So I didn't mean to save them for the end, but it kind of just worked out that way. So Let me know what you think. Like, comment, and subscribe. And tune in to the next episode and tune in to the end because it's coming soon.